Please take your seats. The Vice Chancellor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University of Ibadan, I welcome you to the 2025 Convocation Lecture. The Convocation Lecture is usually part of the Convocation Ceremonies, and this year is not an exception, it is a norm. But this year we are having somebody from the diaspora, somebody who is going to talk to us about Africa. But before we listen to the lectures, I'd like to make a few recognitions. I'd like to recognize the presence of the Vice Chancellor of this university, Professor Kayode Oyebode Adibowale, MNI, FAS, FSPSP. The Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration is also here with us, Professor Peter Olamakinde Olakpigba, C, Psych, FMPA, FSPSP. Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Professor Juwon Arotiba. Ochara, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, Professor Olutoyin Akintola. The Registrar of the University is here this afternoon, Mr. Ganiu Oke Saliu. The Bossa, Mr. Adewuyi Popola. University Librarian, Dr. Masi Iroaganachi. We have many of our deans here. Dean of Arts, Professor R. Olaniyi. Dean of Science, Professor Ibrahim Oladoshu. Dean of Agriculture, Professor Tolu Oshosanya. Dean of the Social Sciences, Professor B.O. Ehige. Dean of Vet Medicine, Professor B.O. Olugasa. Dean of Law, Professor J.O.A. Akintayo. Dean of Economics and Management Sciences, Professor O.A. Folawewo. Dean of Renewable Natural Resources, Professor Adejoke Akinyele. And Dean of Environmental Design and Management, Professor A.M. Alabi. We also have Dean of Nursing, Professor Priska Adejumo. Dean of Students, Professor Demola Louis. The University Orator, Professor C.O. Aimako. I must beg your pardon. I did not do my job well. I apologize. I should have introduced the Provost of the Postgraduate College and the College of Medicine before the Deans. So it's my pleasure now to introduce the Provost of the College of Medicine, Professor T.O. Oguniran, but he's not here. He's being represented by the Dean of Basic Medical Sciences, Professor Yoronke Odunola. I also have the Provost of the Postgraduate College, Professor A.S.O. Ogunjuyigbe. My sincere apologies, sir. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have in this audience the 10th Vice Chancellor of this university, Professor Olufemi Bamiro. We also have the immediate past registrar of the university, Mrs. Bumi Faluyi. The people who are known for literary works in this country, one of them is here ably representing the others, Professor Ayo Bangboche. Sage of Education in Africa, a former chairman of the board of the West African Examination Council, Emeritus Professor Pius Augustine Obaya, Pi Obaya, a former dean of the Old Faculty of Pharmacy and immediate past Vice Chancellor of Chrisland University, Professor Chinedum Peace Babalola. We also have members of the University Governing Council here in our midst. I recognize the presence of the head of the Department of Zoology and member of the Governing Council, Professor Aino Adeogun. I recognize the presence of a senior deputy registrar and member of Governing Council, Mr. Ibukun Akibola. Director, Office of Alumni Relations, Professor Kubi Olasokwe. Director of UI Water, Professor E.A. Ajav. Director of Paulesi, Professor Mubo Shonibare. And one of the living ancestors of this university, Encyclopedia of University Information, Dr. Gani Adeniran. And I'd like to recognize the presence of the chairman, UI Ceremonies Committee, Professor Adenike Akinjobi. Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have all come here to listen to a lecture to be given by a literary giant, because he's a professor, she is a professor of English. But for the purpose of this lecture, we're going to refer to her as Her Excellency, Professor Sarah Ayang Agbo, former Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, African Union Commission. Thank you very much for that resounding applause. And I want us all to give ourselves another round of applause for being part of this program. It's my pleasure now to invite, I'm sorry, did I introduce the Director, Office of Alumni Relations? Professor, oh, thank you very much, sir. It's my pleasure now to invite the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kayode Adebowale, who is also doubling as the chairman of this occasion, to give his welcome address.
The Public Relations Officer has already established the protocol, but let me just make very few recognitions. The Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, the Registrar, the Bossa, the University Librarian, Provost of the College of Medicine, Provost of the Postgraduate College, Deans of Faculties, Directors of Institutes, the Dean of Students also, the 10th Vice Chancellor of this university, the 12th Registrar of this very great university, the living ancestors that are present here. At least we can identify two that will represent the others, Professor Ayo Bangboche and Professor Pius Obaya, the former Vice Chancellor of Chrisland University, the Director of Paulesi, my senior brother, Dr. Gani Adeniran, our esteemed students that are present here, distinguished academics, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is with profound sense of honor and a heart that is full of pride that I welcome you all to this pivotal event in the calendar of our great university, the 2025 Convocation Lecture. This lecture is a cornerstone of the activities marking the 77th Convocation and Foundation Day ceremonies, a period where we not only celebrate the academic accomplishments of our graduating students, but also reflect on our institutional legacy and our role in shaping the future. Today, we are gathered to engage with a topic of monumental importance, not just for Nigeria, but for the entire African continent. Agenda 2063, all hands on deck for the Africa we want. The choice of this theme is both deliberate and prophetic. Agenda 2063 is the Africa's strategic framework and blueprint for transforming the continent into a global powerhouse of the future. It is a bold and audacious vision, one that aspires for an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. However, a blueprint remains a mere document unless it is internalized, it is owned and activated by the people for whom it was created. The phrase, all hands on deck, is therefore the operational soul of this vision. It is a clarion call for a collective action, for a synergistic partnership between governments, the private sector, civil society, academia, and most importantly, the vibrant youth of Africa. To guide our understanding of this critical agenda, we are exceptionally privileged to have a luminary who did not just study this blueprint, but who was instrumental in its crafting and implementation at the highest level. She is a distinguished academic, a renowned administrator, and a formidable force in the Pan-African movement, and a great alumnus of this university. Her Excellency Professor Sarah Aya Agbo, the former Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology at the African Union Commission. She was at the very epicenter of Agenda 2063 architecture. She understands, more than most, the intricate threads that weave together education, scientific innovation, and human capital development as a non-negotiable engines for achieving the Africa that we want. Her insights are not theoretical. They are born of experience, struggle, and a deep-seated passion for our continent. We are truly honored to have Professor Agbo to deliver this lecture. The University of Ibadan, as Nigeria's premier university, has always seen its destiny as intricately linked with the destiny of Africa. For over 7 decades, we have been a citadel of knowledge production, nurturing leaders, innovators, and critical thinkers who have shaped the trajectory of our nation and our continent. In the context of Agenda 2063, our role is unequivocal. We are the deck upon which these hands are trained, equipped, and inspired. Therefore, our universities must serve as innovation hubs, driving scientific and technological advancement that is required for aspiration of Agenda 2063, a prosperous Africa that is based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Our universities must serve as centers for Pan-African thought, fostering the spirit of integration, celebrating our shared heritage, and deconstructing the artificial barriers that seems to divide us. Our universities must serve as nurseries for ethical leadership, instilling in our students the values of integrity, accountability, and service, which are fundamental to good governance. Our universities must serve as solution factories, directing our research energies towards solving Africa's peculiar challenges, from food security and public health to infrastructure and sustainable energy. The Africa we want must be conceived. It must be designed. It must be built within institutions like this one. It is a future we must intellectualize and, importantly, actualize. To our esteemed graduates, who I know some of them are present here, who are the immediate reason for this convocation, this lecture is particularly significant to you. You are not just graduating into a world of opportunities. You are graduating into a continent with a defined, ambitious destiny. You are the primary owners and the ultimate executors of Agenda 2063. The year 2063 may seem very distant to you today, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The steps that you take in your careers, your communities, and your personal development in the coming years will collectively determine whether this grand vision remains a dream or becomes a reality. You are the doctors, you are the engineers, you are the artists, you are the entrepreneurs, you are the policymakers and academics whose hands must be firmly on the deck, steering the African ship towards the desired horizon. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare to receive the wisdom from our illustrious guest speaker, let us open our minds and ready our spirits for a transformative discourse. Let this be more than a lecture. Let it serve as a reawakening of our collective responsibility. I thank you for listening.
I now invite the university orator, Professor Sio Aimaku, to read the citation of the guest lecturer.
Standing on the existing protocol created by the Vice Chancellor, I ask for permission, dear sir, to go ahead with the oration of our speaker. John Rowe said, and I quote, "Whoever renders service to many puts himself, or indeed herself, in line for greatness, great wealth, great returns, great satisfaction, great reputation, and great joy." With this, I would like to introduce our speaker for this 2025 convocation lecture, Her Excellency, Professor Sarah Umbi Eno Anyang Agbo. She's a professor, poet, policymaker, and advocate for education, gender, and youth. Her Excellency, Professor Sarah Anyang Agbo, is a distinguished scholar, poet, and visionary leader with over 25 years of experience in academia and public service. She's a professor of African and Commonwealth literature, and she has dedicated her career to advancing knowledge, fostering innovation, and promoting education across Africa and indeed beyond. She previously served as Inspector of Academic Affairs No. 1 in the Ministry of Higher Education, Cameroon, and a Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Cooperation, and Relations with the business world at the University of Birmingham. She's a Fulbright Scholar in residence at the University of Scranton, USA, and Professor Agbo is the author of several academic books and numerous publications that have enriched scholarships in her field. In July 2017, she was elected Commissioner for Education, Service, Technology, and Innovation of the African Union, a position she held with distinction for 5 years. During her tenure, a lot was accomplished. She championed the implementation of the African Union's Agenda 2063, as mentioned by the Vice Chancellor, through transformation strategies such as the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2016 to 2025, the Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa 2025, the Technical and Vocational Education and Training, amongst others. She also strengthened partnerships with member states, regional economic communities, and global stakeholders. Additionally, I must say, she has facilitated continental and international collaborations with organizations such as the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, the European Union, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, amongst others. Professor Agbo's leadership extended beyond policies into advocacy and youth empowerment. And this is one area she's very known for, where she has worked tirelessly to build ecosystems that integrate education, innovation, research, and entrepreneurship. She has been instrumental in amplifying the voices of women and young people, ensuring inclusive access to quality education, skills, training, and opportunity for sustainable livelihood. Currently, she serves as Inspector of Administration number 2 in the Ministry of Higher Education. She also serves as chairperson of Forum for Innovation in African Universities. She has so much energy. She also serves as deputy board chair of the Forum for African Educational. I'm not done. She's a board member of the UNESCO Institute of Lifelong Learning. She's also a trustee, board member of the African Progress Group, an advisory body member of the United Nations Institute for Training, Research, amongst others. She's also a former vice chairperson of the UNESCO UIL governing body in recognition of her exemplary services and outstanding contributions to the African Union. She was conferred the higher honor of the Commander of the National Order of Valor by the President of Cameroon. I could go on and on, but we're here to listen to a lecture. So permit me, as I say, an end that Professor Sarah Anyang Agbo's enduring priority is to influence regional ecosystems of entrepreneurship, education, and innovations, particularly for women, youth, and marginalized groups, empowering them to access quality education, training, and skills that transform lives, families, and communities across Africa. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I would like to introduce and call to the podium Her Excellency, Professor Sarah Umbi Eno Anyang Agbo, a professor, poet, policymaker, and advocate for education, gender, and youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Greatest UIs. Greatest UIs. Greatest of the greatest and the greatest and the greatest UIs. I'm humbled and I'm proud to be back home. Thank you very much. I don't see why I need to give this lecture again, because the distinguished VC has already done part of my job. Agenda 2063, all hands on deck for the Africa we want. How many of us in this hall know about Agenda 2063? How many of us know about the SDG goals? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to start with that preamble. Now, the Vice Chancellor, the distinguished professor, I sincerely want to appreciate you inviting me to take this lecture. We have met out of the country many times in different fora to give speeches. all the deputy vice chancellors here present, distinguished members of the Senate, deans here present, directors here present. I will want to acknowledge my sister, the VC of University, who is now seated there. And she won the African Union Prize for the best scientists, women scientists, when I was commissioner. I want to, please, don't be offended. I have my friends, my classmates seated here. I just want to recognize them. Don't be angry. Professor Aina Adeogun and Professor Kumbi Olasope, those are my classmates. We were together. Thank you very much. Distinguished members of Senate, faculty and staff, the director of Paulesi, I'm happy Paulesi is still alive. Thank you very much. And then, faculty and staff, graduating students, esteemed parents, captains of industry, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Ekurole. It is with deep gratitude and a sense of duty that I stand before you tonight in this temple of knowledge, the great University of Ibadan, a beacon of intellectual excellence, not only in Nigeria, but across our beloved continent. As we used to say far back in those days, there are only two universities in Africa, the University of Ibadan and, thank you. We gather tonight not only to celebrate academic achievements, but to renew our collective faith in Africa's future, to remind ourselves that the greatness of our continent does not lie in what other thinks of us, but in what we dare to build for ourselves. Agenda 2063, the first slide. I want to introduce the imperative of a collective African renaissance. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Africa stands today at a defining moment. We are a continent blessed beyond measure. Just imagine that 65% of arable land is found in Africa, 35% of diamonds found in Africa, and that the greatest country that produces uranium is Niger. Abundant in minerals, rich in culture, we are young in spirit and vast in potential. Yet, we face contradictions that challenge our progress. And what is this? Poverty in the middle of wealth, unemployment amidst opportunity, and fragmentation amidst shared destiny. That is why I ask the question, how many of us know about Agenda 2063? But all of us know SDG 2030. In 2013, during the 50th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity, African leaders adopted Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. It was a 50-year-old vision, not merely as a policy document, but as a declaration of faith in our capacity to shape our own destiny. African solutions for African challenges. Agenda 2063 calls upon all of us, whether governments, universities, business leaders, civil society, parents, and youth, to join hands in building a prosperous, integrated, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own competent citizens. The message is clear. The time for lamentation is over. The era of dependency must end. This is the age of action, of collective responsibility, of all hands on deck. Like the VC rightly said, that it cannot be a blueprint if it is not implemented. So, this is the age of action, of collective responsibility, of all hands on deck. Tonight, we reflect on a question that goes beyond individual success. What Africa do we want? We are to reflect on a question that concerns all of us, and it is, what kind of Africa do we want by 2063? And let me just throw this to you. Agenda 2063 came before SDG 2030. A 50-year plan divided into 5 phases of 10 years each. Do we revision or do we envision an Africa free from poverty, free from conflict, an Africa where youth innovate in science, technology, and culture, an Africa where women are fully empowered, governance is transparent, and development is people-driven? It is not a government of chop, I chop. Like we say in my country, belle go for front, country go for back. Do you understand that pidgin? Belle go for front, country go for back. An Africa where women are fully empowered, governance is transparent, and development is people-driven. The African Union, in its wisdom, during our 50th anniversary in 2013, gave us a blueprint, the Africa we want. Like the VC rightly said, it is more than a policy document. It is a moral call to action, a challenge to every African to step forward, to innovate, and to lead. This is the Africa envisioned in Agenda 2063, a blueprint for Africa's transformation by 2063. And this evening, I want to lecture you about that Africa and why we all have a great role to play in creating it. So, as we are going to be celebrating, I invite us to reflect on how we can each contribute to this renaissance, not as a spectator of history, but as a builder of destiny. Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. When the African Union articulated Agenda 2063, it envisioned a continent that would, by its centenary, because that will become 100 years, by its centenary in 2063, will stand tall among the nations of the world, strong, united, and self-reliant. But what is Agenda 2063? It rests on 7 aspirations. Each one pillar is a form of transformation. The first aspiration is a prosperous Africa. The second aspiration is an integrated and united continent. The third, an Africa of good governance and justice. Can we really speak of good governance and justice in Africa? A culturally confident Africa, where we are proud of our culture and we do not lose sight of where we are coming from. A culturally confident Africa, a people-driven Africa, especially its women and youth. Not that women will always be seen and not heard, and not that the youth will be said to be leaders of tomorrow, but we don't make them co-creation members at the table right now. And finally, an Africa that is influential and respected globally. These aspirations are not abstract. They are measurable targets, benchmarks. For example, aspiration 1 speaks of inclusive growth and sustainable development, calling for industrialization, agricultural modernization, and climate resilience. Aspiration 6 demands that our development be people-driven, relying on the potential of women, youth, and children. Every aspiration connects to the next because Africa's progress is indivisible. You cannot have good governance without peace. You cannot have peace without prosperity. And you cannot have prosperity without educated, empowered people. That, my friends, is the essence of the Africa we want. Slide 5. Building resilient cities, the engines of Africa's transformation. Africa is urbanizing faster than any other region in the world. By 2050, nearly 60% of our population will live in cities. But here lies both promise and peril. If we plan well, our cities will become engines of creativity, commerce, and culture. And if we fail, they will become centers of chaos, of congestion, pollution, and inequality. As we drove in from Lagos to Ibadan, I saw some transformation in Ibadan. The roads are wider. The bere I used to know, the gbagi I used to know, the songo I used to know, were all looking different because of science and technology. Before, they used to say, Omi yale, agbara shekini. In our days, 1987 to 1998, it was a story of Omi yale. And when they speak of Ibadan, the city on 7 hills, what do you see? Zincs that are brown, that are no longer looking good. But the story is different today because science, technology, and innovation has taken place, and because governance has a vision. So we must therefore build resilient cities, cities that can withstand shocks, adapt to change, and sustain growth. Imagine cities with clean water, renewable energy, don't be angry, sir. Yesterday I came, the light was off, I had to climb that staircase to the VC's office. Today again, have come, is the same story. When I go back to Cameroon, when there is no light, I normally shout NEPA, up NEPA. But our own is NEO. So my husband would say it's not up NEPA, it's up NEO. I don't know if we still have the same problem now. Because I know that Nigeria gives light to Chad. Nigeria gives light to Niger. So we should not have light problem in Nigeria. So, we must have cities where informal settlements are not bulldozed, but upgraded. Where technology connects citizens to services. Just imagine the houses that has been broken down in Lagos, in Makoko. Is it Makoko? I tried to watch Arise TV before coming here. So I know some things. Like in Makoko, those people were staying right at Bar Beach. And then we used to, I don't know if Bere is still as the Bere I used to know. I'm sure with the change that is here, that Bere will no longer be existing. It will be a modern Bere. So imagine cities with clean water, renewable energy, green transport, and affordable housing. Cities where informed settlements are not bulldozed, but upgraded. Where technology connects citizens to services. Where communities are engaged, empowered, and proud. That is why our research must leave the shelf and move to the people as finished products. That is why the university must connect with industries in order to make your researches that you carry out to become blueprints, things that are tangible things that they can hold in order to move on. Why should we be buying Panadol from India? Why should we be buying malaria tablets from India, where we can produce locally, even among ourselves? And I think I should be directing that question to Professor Peace Babalola. In Kigali, civic engagement through Umuganda, community service has transformed the city into one of Africa's cleanest capitals. In Nairobi, innovation hubs are driving youth entrepreneurship. In Freetown, local communities are mapping informal settlements to integrate them into planning systems. These examples remind us that resilience is not just about infrastructure, it is about people. When citizens participate, cities thrive. Say after me. When citizens participate, cities thrive. Universities too have a critical role in producing architects, planners, and environmental scientists who think sustainably, design locally, and act globally. Slide 6, investing in our people. Slide 6, investing in our people, human capital as a cornerstone of prosperity. I used to know a song. One man sọ wípé ìwé kíkọ́ láìsí ọkọ́ àti àdá kò ì pé o, kò ì pé o. Iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ níṣẹ́ ilẹ̀ wa. Ẹni kò ṣiṣẹ́ á máa jà. Àní jalè lórúkọ Jésù. Distinguished guests, investing in our people, human capital as the cornerstone of prosperity is essential, and metaphorically, this song that I have just sung refers to it. Because when we invest in people, we give them the skills that they need. When we invest in people, we are able to make sure that whatever they do will speak to the needs of people. Like we normally say, innovation, necessity is the mother of innovation. So, distinguished guests, let us be honest. The wealth of Africa lies not beneath its soil, but within its people. Our greatest resources in the African mind, creative, courageous, and resilient. With over 60% of Africans under the age of 25, we stand at the brink of either a demographic dividend or a demographic disaster. The difference will depend on how we educate, how we train, and how we empower our young people. We must move beyond education for certification to education for transformation. And that is why last year, the African Union theme of the year was Educate an African Fit for the 21st century. If we do not educate our children, like you will say, Andrew, no check out, oh, Nigeria go better. Nigeria will not be better because the kids will not have the right skills and they are looking for greener pastures. And if they don't have that greener pastures, what do? They seek asylum abroad. What do? They take themselves into hazardous ways to cross and go beyond the other side because they are looking for greener pastures. And that is why we have graves on the Mediterranean Sea without names, and they die in the Sahara Desert. The onus is on us that transformation begins with us. How we think, how we see, how we hear, and what actions we take. Remember that over 60% of Africa under the age of 25, we stand at the brink of either a demographic dividend or a demographic disaster. The difference, like I said, will depend on how we educate, train, and empower our young people. Let's create co-creation spaces for the youth of Africa. When you say the youth are the future of tomorrow, that future begins now, and they need to start sitting on the table